So hello and welcome to the Global Consortium of Entrepreneurship Centers Virtual Connection webinar. This is our 21st session in this series, and today we're going to talk about trends in entrepreneurship education. For those who may be new to the GCEC, you should know that this is an amazing organization. It is a consortium of hundreds of university entrepreneurship centers and those who work in them from all across the globe. And we come together for an annual conference and for virtual gatherings like this one. We have a LinkedIn group, we have a monthly newsletter, an awards program, all kinds of great ways to learn from each other on how to build our entrepreneurship centers. So if you're not already a member, please check out GCEC's website here and join us. So once again, today we're going to talk about research trends in entrepreneurship education. And over the last year or so, both the University of Rochester and Boston University released research studies on entrepreneurship education. The University of Rochester survey gathered data regarding the function, operation, and offerings of entrepreneurship programs around the globe. And the study conducted at Boston University through their Innovate at BU program, it focused on student engagement coming out of the pandemic era. So you can see on the slide here, we have some amazing panelists lined up, and I will, you can read their deeper bios at some point on your own, but I'll tell you just briefly, you can see, well, first of all, my name is Jeff Reed from Georgetown University. We'll have Debbie Kleinman, who's the managing partner of Upside Angels and former executive director of the Blank Center for Entrepreneurship at Babson College. Ian Masheter, executive director of Innovate at BU from Boston University. And Heidi Mergenthaler, Senior Program Manager of the Ains Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the University of Rochester. So first up, I'm going to ask Heidi to give us an overview of the work that she and her team did at Rochester and tell us kind of what trends in entrepreneurship education do you see. So I'm going to take down my slides, let you put yours up, and over to you, Heidi.
Thank you, Jeff, and thanks to Holly and the GCEC team for inviting me to be part of this today. I'm excited to share a little bit about what we've done at the University of Rochester. So I'll just jump right in. A little background on the survey that we conducted. We started doing in 2017. We wanted to do a survey just for our own benefit, essentially at the U of R, on best practices, ways that we could be improving what we were offering. But we quickly realized the benefit that this could have to our entire entrepreneurship education community. And so we decided to make it a recurring survey, put out every other year. And for the last couple of years, with the support of the GCEC organization, which has given us a huge mailing list to be able to send this out to and get a lot of data. Every time we kind of tweak it a little bit based on what we learned in the previous survey, and we ask about what you guys want to know about as educators, what would be beneficial to you. So it's a little bit different every year. That makes it hard to find those year-over-year trends, but we think the information that we're collecting is really relevant and interesting. So this year, the one that went out in 2021 was sent to almost 1,900 people. We got 214 responses from 176 institutions. And just some background on the institutions that participated. You can see we have kind of institution size is well represented across the board from small to large student body size, which I think gives us a good sampling overall. And then geographically, we had responses from 22 countries around the world, 34 states within the US, plus DC and the US Virgin Islands. Most of these were public institutions, but we also had a good share of private institutions responding. So we asked a lot of questions, got a lot of data. You can find the full responses to the entire survey on our website, which I'll share that link at the end. But I just put together some highlights that we noticed in the data when we went through it that we found interesting. So just a little background on the types of questions we asked. We had 5 different buckets. Entrepreneurship center and program demographics, faculty and staff information, center operations, degree programs and curricular offerings, and the impact of the pandemic on entrepreneurial offerings. So looking at demographics, 96% of the universities that participated offer entrepreneurship courses for credit toward a degree program. 85% have co-curricular entrepreneurship centers. 66% are engaged in intercollegiate programs or competitions, and almost 30% have more than one entrepreneurship center or department. So we're all doing a lot of things, as I think we all know. Looking at faculty and staff information, 3% of the responding institutions are lucky enough to have an army of 16 or more full-time staff, but most of us are functioning on pretty small staff rosters with less than five or less full-time staff. Of the people who responded, these are the most common titles of the respondents, but noting that most people who responded actually had more than one position title. So we kind of drew some broad conclusions based on this, but just to give you an idea, and where it says director, that includes associate director, assistant director, same for professor. And one of the most interesting things when we presented this at the GCEC conference back in October is we collected salary information, and a lot of people were interested in seeing this. So I put together some slides that break down by position, but again, noting that many people have more than one position. So you can see there's kind of a big range across the board for directors, for professors, and we will be sharing these slides out afterwards. So I'm going to go through it pretty quickly, but you can look at the slides afterwards or the full data to get a better understanding of everything I'm running through here. One thing we need to do better in the future, I think, is to define positions a little bit better, because I know depending on where you are in the world or what type of institution you're at, sometimes lecturer and professor are kind of used interchangeably. Sometimes they're very different things. So teasing out those differences, I think, will be an important distinction for us to get into in the future to have a little bit more meaningful data. But we interpreted lecturer for this survey for our results that we're sharing in terms of the common US adjunct lecturer type position. Also had a lot of department chairs who responded, and I don't know whether it was even worth including the program managers in this survey in this presentation, as we only got 6 responses from program managers, but it's kind of evenly all over the board. And I will note also that there were people who declined to share this salary information. So this is purely people who volunteered that information to us. The next section, we looked at center operations. 40% of centers are operating on less than $300,000 per year. At the other end of the spectrum, 31% of centers are operating on more than $1 million a year. We did not collect information this time around on what percentage of a center's budget is going to programming, to salary, to operations. That's something that we would be interested in looking at more in the future as well. On to degree programs and curricular options. As we saw earlier, the vast majority of respondents have curricular programs, and the majority of those work closely with their co-curricular centers. So we view that as an interest in having hands-on learning and a desire to test skills learned in the classroom. 51% of institutions with degree programs also offer a certificate program in entrepreneurship. That's another one we'll be looking for more information on in the future as to how institutions are structuring those and how successful they have been. We asked for the most popular course topics that people are teaching in terms of student engagement and popularity. These are the general themes that came up most often. I'm sure there aren't any real surprises here to any of you. But that is what came out at the top. Tracking impact is a question that we asked about, and a lot of people are interested in metrics. One thing we did note, we got a number of responses that a lot of centers and programs still consider themselves in a growth stage. So metrics have not been a priority as they're still trying to find their feet, establish themselves, and grow. But of those who did respond on the metrics that they are tracking, we broke it down into quantitative and qualitative. I won't read through the lists here, but these were the most common responses of what people are tracking to try to measure their success and their impact across their campuses. Co-curricular is similar, but with a few differences. Again, won't read through the entire thing, but this is what people are looking at. We did not really ask anything about how successful people feel that the metrics they've chosen are in evaluating. That's something to explore a little more in a future survey as well. The final category that we asked about was pandemic impact. The survey went out in the summer of 2021, so much fresher in the wake of the highest rates of COVID around the world. We, as educators, we all had to do the emergency shift to online learning. For entrepreneurship in particular, I think we can all agree that entrepreneurship is a really interactive field. A lot of the success of our students relies on building networks, a lot of face-to-face interaction. So that was a challenge to maintain for all of us. Overall, most programs did see participation from students decline. But an unexpected upside was an increase in access to programs. Everybody got familiar with Zoom or other video conferencing technologies. So we no longer had geographical barriers to participation. You could Zoom in judges, mentors, speakers from anywhere in the world. So that really opened up networks in a different way that was beneficial to many of our students. So just a takeaway, these are kind of the major takeaways from all of the information we gathered. There is no one size fits all way to run a center or program. We're all doing tons of things all over the place. And I think as entrepreneurial people, innovating and testing different approaches is a natural way that we all conduct our work with students. So I won't read through this slide as well, but the ultimate takeaway for us as the institution running this survey is having this kind of knowledge from our peers, being able to share it with each other and learn from each other is really, to us, the ultimate benefit as educators, and thinking about ways that we can improve things for our own students. Looking at 2023, these are some of the topics we'd like to explore in a little more detail based on feedback from those who took the survey, as well as things that we discovered as we were going through the data. Oh, gee, it would really be nice to have a little more information on this topic, but we didn't get there this year. So we are always open to suggestions on other things to include in this survey, because again, this is a resource for everyone in this community. The more that we can learn about what our peers are doing and what's working for everybody else and share that with each other, the better off we will all be. So that's the end of the slides I have prepared, but happy to answer what questions I can. I have the link here that goes to, there's a PDF of the full survey responses, all questions and responses, and my contact info there if you'd like to contact me with any questions. So that's it.
And Heidi, that's awesome stuff. Will you put those links in the chat when you get a chance?
Sure.
But thank you to you and your colleagues at Rochester for putting together just a lot of great data. I love your kind of conclusions there around the fact that we can learn a lot from each other, which is the whole purpose of having GCEC as an organization. We always love to benchmark, but as your data has shown, every school's different, right? We all have different scenarios. So on the one hand, that's it's harder to compare apples and oranges and such, but on the other hand, it makes me feel confident that now my job's not going to be disrupted by ChatGPT, since there's no plug and play solutions, right? At least that's the hope. So I guess I'll ask a question there is, were there any trends, anything that surprised you out of the data? I know, and your university's been doing similar surveys. I know it adapts every couple of years, but you've done similar things for a while. So was there anything that was very different this time, or anything that really surprised you?
Well, I'll say up front, I was not involved in the earliest editions of the survey, so I can't really speak to that year-over-year trend. One thing that surprised me as I was going through the data to present today, we did ask a question that I didn't include here about the age of centers and programs. And I was really surprised to see that I think it was something like 81 or 82% of all programs were founded in 2000 or more recently. So to me, that indicates we're still very much an emerging field. There are people who've been around since the 70s doing this work, but I think a lot of us are still building and figuring things out, which is interesting to me.
Very cool. And yes, I do encourage anyone in our audience, feel free to type your questions into the chat. We've had a couple starting there, and we'll get some more as we go. All right, we'll come back with some more questions for Heidi in a few minutes, but I'm gonna ask our other team to tell us about the survey that they conducted. So Ian and Debbie, do you guys want to tell us a little bit about what's going on in student engagement?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Let me share my slides. So my name is Ian Masheter, Executive Director here at Innovate at BU. Debbie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Debbie Kleiman. I'm the former director at Babson College's Blank Center for Entrepreneurship. I still teach and write on entrepreneurship education and do consulting projects like the great one we did at BU with Ian.
Thank you. So just to give you some genesis or the genesis of this, as we got back on campus post-COVID, we started to get concerns about engagement numbers being down, that student behavior was different, and we were seeing it all over campus, not just necessarily in the Entrepreneurship Center, but we felt like we wanted to know what was happening elsewhere, not just at BU. So I asked Debbie to come and help us with this, and she, through her contacts and lots of GCEC members, we did some research in this area. So these were our concerns. What's the right path to reignite our engagement as we come out of COVID? Do programs need to change? And so our methodology that mostly was implemented by Debbie was interviews with students, not just BU students, and staff and faculty from multiple universities. And we published the report on LinkedIn and places, and we can make that available. So what we're going to do here is very much a quick overview of some of the findings that we think might be most interesting for the group on the call today. So I'll run through the first half, what did we find, and then Debbie will talk about recommendations. So what we found coming out of COVID was definitely numbers down, especially with the undergrad population. Even more difficult to get messages out about the center and what we were doing. Interdisciplinary participation, even though it's kind of the holy grail for lots of us, is still very difficult. And we were seeing plenty of staff and faculty turnover and burnout. And what we found is that as we talked to other entrepreneurship centers, that those concerns were echoed by the people that we interviewed. I won't go through all the slide, and you guys are all experienced educators and program staff. You've seen this yourself, but I think we kind of knew that you can't take these young people and lock them down for a year and 18 months and not expect there to be some consequences of that. We just didn't know what the consequences were. And so these are some of the things that we found, and be very interested, as we get into Q&A, to see what other people's observations were about that. But certainly, especially the first semester back was I think difficult for everybody on campus, I think. So Debbie did lots of interviews with students. This is a BU student, and a BU student and somebody working on an entrepreneurial idea here in the center. And we thought it was important just to include the slide so we got some voice of a student in our perspectives here. But I think you can see the message that that Noah was sending here. Just pause for a second, just to let you read that. I think in one way this could be summed up as how do we get them out of their dorm room and off Zoom? So some interesting findings came up as we looked at female students, BIPOC students, and I think some encouraging news from the work was that centers were seeing more female students showing up, female entrepreneurs winning more, which is increasing their confidence levels and having an effect on other female students. That in centers, Black students continue to be underrepresented, and that often these underrepresented groups don't really feel like the center is for them. It's for some other people on campus, not for them. So one of the things that we did, and I'm very interested to see what other people did, is we after a short period of that, we realized we had to cut the cord. So though I appreciate Heidi's comments, we actually had the same effect of being able to bring mentors and speakers in from everywhere in the world. So we did still do some of that, but in terms of student participation, we basically cut the cord. Our events went back to being in person only. We felt very strongly that one of the benefits of getting students in a room together was the accidental collisions that happen when folks meet each other, or students meet each other. So not universally popular with some of our students, but we felt strongly that this is something that we should do, and to be interested in people's reactions to this when we talk. I'm thinking many of you did the same thing, but would be interested to see that. So moving on from what we found, Debbie is going to talk about best practices.
Thanks, Ian. Some of the great outcome of doing this research was that I interviewed so many center directors and program directors and students and faculty that gave us incredible ideas for how they were engaging students in their area. And these best practices, I think, for all of us, are really good lessons into how we can do more to engage students going forward. So it was actually a really exciting set of ideas that ended up coming out of this research, and we're really happy to be able to share them with you all. I'll cover them at a very high level, but happy to go into any of them deeper through Q&A. And then we'll also post the longer version of the study results if people want to read through them in a little bit more detail after this webinar. So let's go. So one of the big things that came out that we heard was using mindset and skill building messages versus, very hardcore venture building jargon, startup jargon laced messaging. So in order to get more students to be coming into the center, the idea would be to talk about life skills or get a job skills that you're going to develop as a result of participating in the very experiential activities of an entrepreneurship center. So we were hearing a lot of folks in their messaging talking to students about, how this will help them get a job, or how this entrepreneurial mindset will serve them all throughout their lives and being really good at whatever they choose to do because they've learned how to think entrepreneurially. So folks were having a really good success rate instead using those types of words and terminology and ideas when marketing activities at their center. Sometimes what they were feeling like and getting feedback on was that venture building messaging was very intimidating to people who were really new to the space and who hadn't really considered themselves entrepreneurs yet. And so this was allowing them to bring in more new folks to sort of indoctrinate them into the center activities and get them involved. And, at the end of the day, the serious entrepreneurs will find you on their own. If there's a student that's building a venture and is knee deep in it, they will find the center on their own. So to a certain extent, you don't have to worry about messaging them as much or messaging to them as much about what the center has to offer, because they're going to come find you and get those resources anyway. So focusing more on mindset and skill building messages seem to be a successful way to get more kids in the door. As part of the research that I did, I talked to a lot of event producers. So I sort of went outside of our ecosystem and talked to event producers for corporations or startup community ecosystem type people who were making events for startups in their communities. And I learned some really interesting things about this sort of generation of students. And it's around this idea of the stakeholder economy. And they no longer want to just be participants in their activities at school. They want to be owners of it. They want to be stakeholders in it. And so some of the best practices that we were talking about really were around this idea of giving them more ownership in their experiences, giving them a voice or a job or a role to play in every event that you were holding at the center as much as possible, and where it made sense, of course, but where you could give them a stakeholder or role or an opportunity to really affect what was going on, they seemed to be more engaged when that was the case. And one of the ways to do that was developing transitions and traditions. And transition and traditions are things that you can do in the center around your event and around the types of things that you're creating for your students to allow them to be more memorable. So maybe it's something that happens to them when they walk into the center or when they leave the center on a daily basis. Some talked about having posted, who's working at the center at any given time, so that when you walked in, you saw who was there, or having someone at the front who could immediately triage people coming into the center who may not have been there before. But making those transitions to in and out of the center by using, certain tactics to make people feel welcome. There were also traditions to celebrate milestones that people talked about that seemed to be really effective, whether it was celebrating, the accomplishment of moving on to the next point in their entrepreneurial journey, or something about the community is celebrated, or some big wins and a pitch competition that's external to the school, having the whole center community come together and celebrate those folks. So related to that is this idea of badges of honor. And so really having symbolic ways of celebrating the people who are at the Entrepreneurship Center. And that could be anything from a cord or a medallion at graduation. Like in this picture, these are BU students who completed the first entrepreneurship minor at BU, and they got a special cord that they could wear at graduation. And they were really proud to kind of shout out their involvement in the program, which then obviously affects other people hearing about it and seeing it. Special swag was talked about a lot. Like if you have a cohorted program that is really special or hard to get into, making sweatshirts or water bottles, or even just whatever symbolically they can carry around and show that they are part of a special group, giving them VIP access to certain events if they are involved in the center in a really deep way, or having ceremonies where they, get celebrated for the next thing that they've accomplished. So these are all actually little things, and those little things add up to a lot, because when you develop a set of transitions and traditions, they kind of build upon themselves and create some really nice ripple effects. Another point that we learned a lot about was movement, not programs. So really tapping into the psychology of what a movement is versus like, we're running this program, helping students feel like they're a part of something that's much bigger than themselves, or much bigger than just that startup that they're working on. And 3 elements of movement are that they are magnetic, so they're memorable. How will they pull people into the experience, even if they're very introverted? So that's doing things to help people get comfortable right away, whether it's icebreakers at every event, or making sure that everybody is specifically welcomed when they come to an event or has an opportunity to participate in an event in a non-intimidating way. Imprintable is just how is their participation going to transform the experience? And again, by making it imprintable, it is reinforcing the idea that being together live and in person is important. And it's very much part of the experience of entrepreneurship education. And so this imprintable idea reinforces that making people be there together and participate together makes the experience that much better. And lastly, badgeable. And so there are several examples from schools that we talked to about providing symbols of participation, whether it's an ongoing program like UNH offers at their school, where their passport program, where they're getting stamps for everything that they do that kind of culminate at the end of the year in prizes, or other schools who provided incentives for people to show up more often. Maybe it was, access to good food or access to a really highly coveted mentor, things like that allow them to show some kind of result of their participation and make that movement a badgeable movement. Maybe it's something they could put on their LinkedIn profile that they participated in and allows them to show the world that they've accomplished something at the center. And then this last set of best ideas is this thought that it really has to be different than the classroom. What you do in the center can't feel like the classroom, and that even includes things like panels. It has to be experiential. It has to be where these students are getting their hands dug in deep with the details of developing an entrepreneurial mindset, developing a venture of their own, and that they have opportunities to work on their business specifically, and that they also have opportunities to meet each other and network. What Ian talked about at the beginning was that they haven't developed some of the college social skills that they might have developed already at this point because of the COVID lockdown, and they weren't interacting in the same ways that we have seen in years prior. So it's really on the center to help them develop some of those social skills. And you can do that by having these experiential environments and these ways for them to be interacting and growing their social skills and networking skills at the same time. So these are very high level key best practices. Welcoming in words and deeds is about, letting everybody feel like they're being welcomed, whether it is just saying, welcome to the center by having someone, right at the front door as an ambassador to the center and kind of triaging people as they come through the door. The point is to have lots of on-ramps into the center, lots of places where they can make a connection that allows them to get through that front door and start participating and feel welcomed there. And related to this idea is that the center is for them. So Ian talked about that idea for underrepresented students not feeling like it's for them. It's important that we're being really thoughtful how to make it feel like it's for them. And sometimes you have to be very specific in your outreach and in your marketing to make sure that they feel that way. Creating student leaders that are there to build the center with you, alongside you, was something that was talked about quite a lot. Almost every single one of the people I talked to mentioned this as an important strategy for gaining student engagement, empowering student leaders to be there either as like peer mentors, sharing, maybe they're one step ahead in the journey from someone else and they can share that information, or letting graduate students who are working on ventures help undergraduate students, or vice versa. I know at Babson, a lot of times our undergraduate students were really, really good, and we're actually going and mentoring some of our grad students, but allowing for that kind of cross-pollination and let them be leaders. One of the things that was really important though about this empowering idea was that if you pay them to do these roles, that is the best version of this, and it allows a lot more equity to be had for the student population, because there are some students who can't spend time being an ambassador for your center because they have to work a job at school. So making it a real job and paying students to be student leaders in the center allows a much more equitable distribution of those opportunities. So that's something to think about for your budget. giving them roles in events. Maybe they're emceeing an event, maybe they're planning an event. Those are all building life skills for them as they work towards their college degree. Being able to do things in the center and push their limits in the center is a wonderful, wonderful practice for them to get into, and builds all kinds of great life skills and get a job skills, and gives them ownership, like I talked about, in that stakeholder mindset, if they're really very involved in creating events and programs. Another idea that I thought was really interesting was this marketplaces idea, and that's where you're allowing students of all kinds who have expertise to offer it to the startups in the center. So creating some type of marketplace or job board, or way that maybe design students can offer their expertise. And in some cases, the centers were subsidizing these jobs that people were getting hired for by the startups in the center. And what that does is it brings that interdisciplinary holy grail that Ian talked about, by offering students who maybe don't have a startup but have really great skills that they could lend to startups a reason to be in the center. Also helps fill it up and creates more engagement, and again creates that sort of interdisciplinary feeling and reach across the center. And then having cross campus champions is very helpful, both on the student end and on the faculty end. So having reach into different, if you are a large school and you have multiple divisions or multiple schools within your university, having champions at the faculty level across campus and in multiple disciplines is really, really helpful. And it's on you as executive directors to cultivate those relationships, because they will be very valuable to you in bringing students from other disciplines into the center and asking those faculty and staff in other schools to be helpful to you. And marketing really matters a lot. So being more sophisticated with your marketing in terms of segmentation of your marketing messages, having students help you out by doing the social media part of your marketing is a really, really good advice that we heard. And just making sure that you're able to cut through the noise and provide something really valuable to the students that make them walk through that door and get to participate. So that's the top level of what we learned. And again, happy to share more in depth. The folks that participated gave so many great examples, and a lot of those examples are in the longer report.
Wow. Thank you, Ian and Debbie. That was full of some amazing information and tips. I really appreciate that. I'll ask you guys what I asked Heidi. Was there anything that really surprised you in the results of the survey that you guys did?
Debbie?
I don't know if it was all that surprising. I think what made me excited was the amount of innovation that was happening at the center level in terms of trying to come up with new ways of engaging students and program ideas. I mean, entrepreneurship center directors are so entrepreneurial themselves, and it was just really impressive of how many things they were trying and experimenting. And I thought that was great, and it really it was wonderful to be able to collect it all and share it now with all of you, because now you can benefit from each other. But I also think that the other thing that I found surprising but was excited by was just the amount of female students that were finding their way into centers, growing their confidence, participating in competitions, winning a lot of competitions. And it was really nice to see how many schools were creating programs that were just for female entrepreneurs, the things that were very specific to them, and really being providing that kind of support in a very directed way.
I think from my part, Jeff, I think some of the reactions or some of the input from students was kind of telling, and also faculty talking about how students are. I was just looking for a quote that maybe I could give you. This was from a faculty member. Students are not working with the same deck of cards that students have come before them. They don't have the same toolbox. They don't have the same level of confidence in themselves. They're intimidated much more readily. So I haven't seen this process happen before ever. I do think it's specific to the pandemic. So I think it was some of those interviews which I think the depth of some of that reaction was maybe more than we expected.
Excellent. I'm going to ask you guys. I know Heidi's got a lot of questions. She's answering. She's furiously chatting in the here about her survey. Question for you guys. I'll ask Ian and Debbie first, and then Heidi, you can chime in. So for Ian and Debbie, is this a survey that you plan to repeat, or was this kind of like a one-time thing? And if you were going to do it again, are there other new insights that you would specifically look for?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point, Jeff. We saw it as a one-off because it was based on, hopefully a one-off event, which is coming back onto campus after a pandemic. So that's what we saw it. And can I just give one quick tip to everybody here? One thing I found very useful is that I got everybody in all the center staff to read the report, pick out the 4 or 5 things that were most important to them and things that they wanted to work on. And then we had an incredibly useful half-day offsite going through. Somebody really liked my point there. And we had a very great offsite where people really got into the issue. So the report acted as a really great catalyst for conversation amongst faculty and staff.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think I might take you up on that suggestion, like read through the report and pick out some things to discuss on the team. So Heidi, the report and the research that Rochester has done that you reported is like the latest in a series of these surveys. And you did mention that there are plans underway for the next iteration. If anybody had suggestions, is it too late to get into the 2023 version or to start planning for whatever comes after that?
We'll take suggestions at any time. And I should mention that link that I put in the chat to the full survey report and results. We have that for all of the surveys we conducted. So you can see for yourself the different types of questions we were asking in 2017, 2019, 2021. And yeah, we're open to any and all suggestions about what you would like to know about. Our typical schedule is we send this out during the summer. Then we take some time to go over the results before we publish. People who respond to the survey get those results in advance of everybody else. So just a little incentive if you're eager to get your hands on some data.
Excellent. All right, I'm gonna, you guys, if you see anything in the chat or anything else you want to chime in on, feel free, but I'm gonna ask Debbie a question. First, Debbie, you were talking about marketing as one of the last points. And I know that's crucially, I consider my job to be half of it is just marketing what we do. And did you learn anything any secrets or tips or just great examples that you think would be worth sharing?
Yes, we learned a ton about marketing. Actually, the marketing slides went on and on and on because that is across the board something that everybody is struggling with. And just to sort of relate to Heidi's study, I wonder if there's a question you could add on, how many centers actually have their own marketing people, because across the board, it kind of felt like the centers that did have their own marketing people had a much easier time of this than people who had to rely on a centralized marketing function at the school to help them, or kind of as the director or the program manager do it themselves. Like, it is one of those things where you actually need someone whose full-time job it is to market the activities of the center, because there is so much you can do. So we talked a lot about segmentation. That was interesting, for those of you that are marketing geeks in the audience here, the more nitty gritty you can get in segmentation with your marketing, the better off you're going to be. And that can be anything from your newsletter lists. So like, maybe you have one list for students that are really heavy duty, serious entrepreneurs, and another list for students that are new to it. If you can get more granular in who you're sending what, you're going to have a better success with what you're sending them. And newsletters were a must-have for sure. The other thing we heard a lot was people outsourcing their Instagram and their TikTok to students. It's much better received if the students are doing that kind of stuff. And, you know, the point there is just give them some guidelines and then they can run with it. Like, obviously you don't want them going crazy and doing things that don't match sort of with the brand you're trying to build, but they're incredible and so facile with this, and they can do a great job if you just give them a little bit of guidance and some guardrails to a certain extent. Working with other student clubs. So everybody sounded like they were working with their entrepreneurship student clubs, but several folks talked about working with other types of business clubs on campus, or design clubs, or technology clubs on campus, and bringing them into the fold was another great way to sort of spread ideas and marketing and interest in the center. And then, you know, definitely being very present in orientation activities was another thing that I heard a lot. Like, if you could either develop a pre-orientation program and get students there early to do something entrepreneurial, that way you're getting emails from admissions, which was pretty cool. We had another program that talked about how they involved their prizes were involved with financial aid. So they were able to get financial aid emails and reach out to those kids early on. So, you know, any way that you can reach out to students right when they're getting on campus, it's a really good idea. And so to be visible during orientation, I think it was you, Jeff, that mentioned the giant 6-foot light bulb.
It's a 25-foot light bulb. Yeah, we got a big inflatable light bulb with our logos and things on it, and we've learned we can actually put it in our building, but we also put it outside. It's like one of those big like holiday inflatables people have in their yards. It's a version like that, and it gets attention. So that's been a fun.
Yeah. So like,
So
yeah, I mean, all of you, I'm sure, have fairs at the beginning of school where you're introducing student clubs and so forth. So Jeff's light bulb got a lot of attention, and a lot of people, you know, noticed the club for that.
yeah, so inspired by that, Jeff, our marketing manager bought a pizza suit online and walked around campus to advertise our pitch and pizza event. So you're having an effect up here in the Northeast, Jeff.
I think it is the reality. I mean, this may have been the case before COVID, but continues even more. Is just getting the attention of our students is a constant challenge, and trying to be new and creative and cut through the noise. I think it maybe never was true that if you build it, they will come, but even more so now, we have to work to make sure that, you know, you put on good programming, but you also have to make sure everybody knows that it's there, so they know to come to your good programming.
I'll add that we did ask a little bit about marketing in our latest edition of the survey. I'm sure we definitely did not ask about costumes and inflatables, so that's something to add for the next one. But we could definitely expand that too. It seems there's definitely interest in that.
And I think these are, you know, we're definitely starting to get a little deeper into this whole marketing topic, but these are topics that are often the subject of a workshop at the GCEC conference. Maybe we'll have a webinar someday on, you know, how do you market to your students? But there's so much opportunity to share and learn from each other. So I'm glad we're starting this conversation here. Okay, next question. By the way, before I go to the next question, I think both surveys, you've already shared a lot of information. I think you both pledged to share the results, and we'll put them on the GCEC website. So unless I'm wrong about that, let's assume that'll be the case. The video for this session and the slides from today that you presented and the survey results, we'll try to post all that to the GCEC webinar virtual connection page. Okay, so my question is forward looking. So you've done research on trends and kind of a census of what things look like today. Based on what you've seen, observed, and the data and the interviews have told you, do you have a prediction of where things might be going in terms of entrepreneurship education? And I'll just open that to any of our panelists to go first on that.
I think Debbie's point is right, and I see some of that discussion in the chat as well. Is that more focus on entrepreneurial mindset rather than a hard focus on venture building, and that's reflected in some of the strong comments in the chat as well. So I think that's and then connecting that with careers. So connecting the fact that mindset gained through experiential work at the center translates into better interviews and translates into job opportunities. I think that's something that we have to, all of us, kind of get better at, and I think there's, you know, I think we're all evolving along that line.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think that that's spot on. The other thing I would say is that what I heard a lot of is that as student experiences grow, they start to have a desire to start up in doing things that they're familiar with. And so almost to a person, everybody said, we have more mental health startups than we ever have before.
Yeah.
Right now. And, you know, students want to start mental health startups because of the pandemic and what they saw happen and how they felt. So, you know, I think a lot of what students think about in terms of wanting to start up is obviously related to their own experiences. And so I think if you can open the aperture on the types of experiences that they have, there would probably be more ideas and more things that they would want to start up besides, you know, another how long is the line at the bar app.
Yeah, I'll agree with all that as well. And you know, saying not just from the perspective of the survey we run, but from GCEC conferences and other work I've done, I'll highlight experiential, I think is going to be blowing up. That's already been an increasing trend just in the last few years. And I think, especially coming out of the pandemic, students want to get back to more interactive, hands-on, let me just do the thing.
This is great. You know, a lot of what we're discussing here is just how do we reach students in general, and these are things that are relevant beyond the entrepreneurship field. I think this presentation has demonstrated that entrepreneurship education, entrepreneurship centers are often leading the way and being more innovative in ways that our peers in other disciplines or other programs are often following our lead, right? So it sounds pretty cool. All right, we're getting close to the end. I'm going to show you guys what the light bulb looks like real quick, just in case. I got a couple of questions there. That's
wow.
We put it in front of a house. We put it at our farmers market on campus. Sometimes we ask for permission, sometimes we just do it. And on the other side, it has our tagline, create the future. And it just gets people's attention. All right, so thanks for asking.
Yeah, I mean, I think related to that, Jeff, was people, the entrepreneurship center staff going to where the students are. So don't just stay in your center and in your building, like go to the student center, go where they go to some of the places that they eat, like have events where they already are, not just in the center. So sometimes it takes you bringing it to them versus, you know, trying to attract them in your front door.
Awesome. All right, we are about out of time, so please join me in thanking all three of our panelists. Thanks for all the work. I know research like this doesn't happen without a lot of work. So thank you for putting the work in, and thank you for sharing all those results. This is really amazing. I appreciate it. I always learn a lot. So thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Heidi.
Thanks for having us.
As we close out, I want to say, you know, the pandemic engagement, I remember when we started this series, we, you know, seemed to get a good crowd. And now here we are almost 3 years later, and we're still getting over 160 people sticking with us for a whole hour. So I really appreciate the audience coming out, and I hope you guys have all learned a lot too. Once again, thanks to our panelists. Just a quick plug, we have virtual connections coming up every month. In February, we're going to talk about financials and operations for your entrepreneurship center. And then at the end of March, we're going to talk about how to create, grow, and manage your board, whether that be usually an advisory board, but different people have different structures for their boards. So those are our two upcoming topics. And then we have some other dates already locked in without the topics yet locked in. So I want to also give a shout out to our new executive director of GCEC. Many of you know, maybe not everybody knows that Holly DeArmond has joined as our first ever full-time employee for GCEC. And so Holly is working hard, making a lot of great things happen. She was recently the director at the Smith
Dingman
School,
Center for Entrepreneurship.
Dingman Center at the University of Maryland. My neighbors here. And
your neighbor, yeah.
That's right. So
Yeah.
So we're thrilled to have Holly on board, and I just
Thank you, Jeff.
say that that as as GCEC continues to evolve and grow, we're looking for engagement and ideas from our members on more ways to connect and build connectivity, and things like this virtual connection series or our LinkedIn group, or who knows what else might happen. We're all trying to figure out ways to connect with one another and build more around this field of entrepreneurship education. So Holly, I'll let you, anything you want to say to close us out here? The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, and thank you, panelists. Yeah, it's so great to see so many of you. I'm excited about this new opportunity, and I hope we can have more sessions like this. This is really central to what we're hoping to offer our memberships moving forward. So hope to see you in February.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.